In 1978, the United States Food and Drug Administration sent seizure notices to 17 American herb companies. The notices were not warnings. They were not requests. They were orders to destroy every bottle on every shelf by midnight. The plants inside those bottles had been used by American families for over 200 years. They had been carried west in covered wagons. They had been planted in dooryard gardens from Maine to Texas. They had pulled soldiers through the Civil War, mothers through childbirth, and children through the Spanish flu. They had been listed in the official United States Pharmacopoeia, and in a single generation they were declared dangerous, unscientific, and unfit for sale. Your grandmother knew this. Your great-grandmother grew most of these plants in her own garden. She did not call them medicine. She called them what they were. She called them willow and yarrow and mullein and plantain. She knew which leaf to crush on a wound and which root to boil for a cough. She did not need a clinical trial. She had 3 generations of mothers behind her who had already tested every remedy on their own families. Today we count down 20 forgotten home remedies your grandmother used before commercial pharmacies replaced traditional knowledge. Number 16 was removed from the official United States Pharmacopoeia in 1942. The same year, a pharmaceutical company patented a synthetic replacement. Number 11 was banned outright by the Food and Drug Administration in 1960. The same year it disappeared from the recipe of every major root beer in America. Number 6 was the most prescribed plant medicine in the United States until antibiotics arrived. Then it was dismissed as quackery within 15 years. They were not banned because they stopped working. They were banned because somebody got rich when you forgot them. Before we begin, hit subscribe. What you are about to learn is not folklore, it is not survival fantasy. It is American history preserved by the women who refused to throw away what their mothers taught them. Let us count down. Number 20, the white willow bark. Long before a German chemist patented aspirin in 1899, your great-great-grandmother stripped the inner bark of the white willow tree, dried it over the wood stove and brewed it into a bitter tea for fevers and headaches. The technique had not changed in 2,000 years. Hippocrates wrote about it. Civil War nurses carried it in their satchels. The bark contains a compound called salicin. When you drink the tea, your liver converts it into salicylic acid. That is the molecule the German chemist patented and renamed aspirin. The plant did the same work, gentler on the stomach, for a tiny fraction of the cost. The tree is legal. It grows wild along creeks in nearly every state. Your grandmother knew this. Every farm wife knew this. Number 19, the yarrow leaf. The Greeks called it the soldier's woundwort, the herb that Achilles carried into battle. On American homesteads, when a child cut a hand on a fence wire or a farmer split his thumb on an axe, the woman of the house ran to the garden, pulled a handful of yarrow, crushed the feathery leaves between her palms and pressed the green pulp directly into the bleeding wound. The bleeding stopped within 30 seconds. Modern phytochemistry now identifies the active compound. It is called Achillean. It triggers the same clotting cascade as the synthetic styptics sold in emergency rooms today. The plant grows wild in every pasture in North America. It costs nothing. It worked then. It works now. Number 18, the common plantain leaf. Not the banana relative, the flat-ribbed weed growing right now in every American lawn between the cracks of every sidewalk. The Anglo-Saxons listed it as one of 9 sacred healing herbs in the year 900. Native American tribes called it the white man's footprint because it followed European settlers across the continent. Your great-grandmother chewed a leaf into a wet pulp and slapped it onto wasp stings, snake bites, splinters, and infected scratches. Within hours, the swelling went down. Within a day, the infection drew clean. The leaf contains allantoin and aucubin, compounds that draw out venom and accelerate skin cell turnover. The plant is in your yard right now. You have been walking on it your whole life. Number 17, the mullein leaf tea. The tall, fuzzy roadside plant, with the yellow flower spike that pioneers called the candlewick plant, because they dipped the dried stalks in tallow and burned them as torches. The leaves, dried and steeped in hot water, made a tea that loosened mucus, soothed inflamed lungs, and quieted the racking coughs of tuberculosis patients in the 1800s. It was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia until 1936. Modern research identifies saponins and mucilage in the leaf that explain exactly why your great-grandmother's mullein tea ended a chest cold in 3 days. The plant is everywhere, every roadside, every abandoned lot. The technique has not changed. Number 16. The cannabis tincture. This is our first patent break. Cannabis tincture was listed as an official medicine in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1850 until 1942. For 92 years, every American pharmacy sold cannabis preparations openly. Squibb sold it. Eli Lilly sold it. Parker Davis sold it. Family doctors prescribed it for menstrual cramps, migraines, nausea, asthma attacks, insomnia, and chronic pain. In 1937, the Federal Marijuana Tax Act imposed crushing fines on any pharmacy that continued to dispense it. In 1942, the United States Pharmacopoeia removed it under federal pressure. Within 10 years, an entire generation of American doctors had forgotten how to prescribe it. Your great-grandmother had a small amber bottle on the medicine shelf, with a glass dropper, labeled simply Cannabis Indica Tincture. She put 3 drops in warm tea for the pain of childbirth. The plant did not change, the law did. The same compound, now called cannabidiol, is being re-legalized state by state, 80 years after federal prohibition erased it from American medicine. Number 15. The raw honey wound dressing. Every farm kept bees. Every kitchen had a jar of dark, unfiltered honey on the shelf. When a child fell on barbed wire, when a man cut his leg open clearing brush, when an infected ulcer would not close, the woman of the house spread raw honey thick over the wound and bandaged it. The wound healed clean. Today, a medical-grade honey called Medi-honey is sold by prescription in American hospitals. It received Food and Drug Administration approval in 2007. Burn wards use it on third-degree burns. Wound care nurses use it on diabetic ulcers that have refused to heal for months. The honey your grandmother had on her shelf was doing the same job, for a fraction of the cost, decades before modern medicine quietly acknowledged it. Number 14. The raw garlic clove. In the trenches of the First World War, when antibiotics did not yet exist, British and American field surgeons packed crushed raw garlic into infected gunshot wounds. The mortality rate from gangrene dropped sharply. The compound responsible is called allicin. It is released only when the clove is crushed. Modern laboratory studies confirm that allicin kills several strains of bacteria that have grown resistant to penicillin and amoxicillin. Your great-grandmother put a chopped clove in honey for sore throats. She rubbed crushed garlic into the soles of a feverish child's feet. The plant is in every grocery store for $2 a head. The technique has not changed. Number 13. The apple cider vinegar tonic. Not the filtered grocery store kind. The dark, cloudy, raw kind with the mother floating in it. Hippocrates prescribed it in 400 BC. Your great-grandmother took a tablespoon in a glass of warm water before meals to ease digestion, settle heartburn, calm an upset stomach, and clear what she called sluggish blood. The vinegar contains acetic acid, and the mother contains beneficial bacteria. Modern studies show it slows the glucose spike after carbohydrate meals and supports the gut microbiome. The American food industry sells filtered pasteurized vinegar that does almost none of this. The unfiltered raw bottle, the one your grandmother kept on the kitchen counter, is the one that worked. Number 12. The ginger root tea. Every farm kept a ginger jar in the kitchen. When a child was car-sick, seasick, queasy with stomach flu, or vomiting from a fever, the mother sliced a piece of fresh ginger root, simmered it in water for 10 minutes, and gave the warm tea by the spoonful. The nausea stopped within 20 minutes. In 2012, The National Institutes of Health published a study confirming that ginger root reduces chemotherapy-induced nausea in cancer patients more effectively than several leading prescription anti-nausea medications. The compound responsible is called gingerol. Your great-grandmother did not know its name. She knew that it worked. The root is in every grocery store. The technique has not changed. Number 11. The sassafras tea. This is our second pattern break. For 300 years, every spring, American families dug the red root of the sassafras tree, scrubbed it clean, boiled it slowly, and drank the warm rust-colored tea as what they called a blood thinner and spring tonic. The bark of the sassafras root was the original flavor of root beer. Every major American soft drink, from Hires to A&W, was made with real sassafras root through the 1950s. In 1960, the Food and Drug Administration banned sassafras oil and root bark as a food additive after a single study found that the compound saffrole, isolated and fed in massive concentrated doses to laboratory rats, caused liver tumors. The dose used was hundreds of times higher than any human would consume in tea. The synthetic flavor that replaced it in root beer is a chemical called methyl salicylate. The tree is still legal to grow. The bark is still legal to harvest for personal use. The tea is still illegal to sell. Your great-grandmother did not need a clinical trial. She had 3 centuries of American families who had already tested it. Number 10. The chamomile flower tea. Egyptian healers prescribed it in 1500 BC. Roman mothers gave it to teething infants. Your great-grandmother dried the small white daisy-like flowers in a paper bag in the pantry, then steeped them in hot water before bed for sleep, before meals for digestion, and into a cool compress for tired or infected eyes. The active compound is called apigenin. It binds to the same receptors in the brain that benzodiazepine sleep medications target, but gently, without dependency, without the morning fog. The plant grows wild in roadsides and gardens across America. It costs nothing. Number 9. The onion poultice. Every farmhouse, every winter, kept onions in the cellar. When a child came down with croup, that terrifying barking cough that closes a small windpipe, the mother sliced a yellow onion thick, wrapped the slices in a square of cheesecloth or a clean dish towel, warmed the packet on the wood stove, and laid it directly on the child's chest under flannel pajamas. By morning, the cough had loosened, the breathing had eased. The compound responsible is called quercetin. Modern research confirms it reduces respiratory inflammation and breaks up congested mucus. Your great-grandmother did not know what quercetin was. She knew that the onion drew the sickness out. She knew it because her mother knew it and her grandmother before her. The technique has not changed. Number 8. The slippery elm bark. The Lenape and Iroquois tribes harvested the inner bark of the slippery elm tree, dried it, ground it to a fine powder, and mixed it with cold water into a thick gel. American Civil War surgeons carried slippery elm in their kit bags. It was used as emergency food when soldiers were starving, and as medicine for diarrhea, sore throats, stomach ulcers, and inflamed intestines. The bark contains a complex polysaccharide called mucilage. It coats and protects irritated mucous membranes from the mouth to the colon. It is still sold today in lozenges and powders, but the tree itself has been devastated by Dutch elm disease. Your great-grandmother bought a small box at the apothecary for 10 cents. The technique has not changed. Number 7. The wild lettuce sap. Not the lettuce in your salad. A tall, bitter cousin called Lactuca virosa, which grew along American fence lines and country roads. When you snapped the stem, a thick white sap oozed out. Pioneers called it the poor man's opium. They dried the sap on the stem, scraped it off in flakes, and dissolved it in water for severe pain, restless sleep, anxiety attacks, and persistent dry coughs. The compound responsible is called lactucarium. It binds to the same opioid receptors as morphine, gently, without addiction, without overdose risk. In 1865, it was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia. By 1930, after the rise of synthetic painkillers, it had been dropped. Your great-grandfather did not have aspirin. He did not have ibuprofen. He had wild lettuce sap in a brown glass bottle on the shelf above the kitchen sink. The plant still grows. The technique has not changed. Number 6. The echinacea root. This is our third pattern break. The purple coneflower native to the American prairie, Cherokee, Sioux, and Comanche tribes used the root for snake bites, infected wounds, and what they called blood poisoning. By 1895, it was the most prescribed plant medicine in the United States, sold by Parker Davis and other major pharmacy houses. Then antibiotics arrived in the 1940s, and within 15 years, echinacea was dismissed by the American Medical Association as quackery. The displacement was not based on evidence of failure. It was based on the profitability of patented synthetic drugs that could not coexist with a plant anyone could grow in their backyard. In 1985, German researchers published the first of over 300 clinical studies showing that the polysaccharides in echinacea root activate macrophages, the immune cells that hunt and destroy bacteria and viruses. Your grandmother bought a bottle at the country store for 50 cents. The plant grows wild from Texas to Iowa. The knowledge was never lost. It was only buried. Number 5. The white oak bark wash. The strongest, most tannin-rich bark in the American forest. Pioneer families stripped small pieces of white oak bark, boiled them slowly into a dark astringent tea, and used the cooled liquid as a wash for skin infections, bleeding gums, mouth ulcers, sore throats, hemorrhoids, and weeping wounds that refused to close. The tannic acid in the bark binds to bacterial proteins and tightens damaged tissue. It is the same compound used by veterinarians today to firm up the hooves of horses with foot rot. Your great-grandmother did not have hydrogen peroxide. She did not have antibiotic ointment. She had a kettle of white oak bark tea simmering on the stove. The tree is in every Eastern American forest. The technique has not changed. Number 4. The stinging nettle. The plant every American child has been warned to avoid. The leaves covered in tiny hollow needles that inject formic acid and histamine into your skin on contact. Your great-great-grandmother knew that the same sting that hurts is exactly what heals. She would pick young spring nettles with leather gloves, dry them carefully, and brew the dried leaves into a deep green tea drunk daily for arthritis, joint pain, allergies, and chronic inflammation. She would also brush the fresh stinging leaves directly against arthritic knees and stiff hands. The deliberate sting reduced the underlying pain for days. In 1923, the American Medical Association quietly recommended discontinuing the practice as primitive and unscientific. Modern research now confirms that the histamine released by the nettle triggers a counter-irritant response that suppresses the deeper inflammatory cascade in arthritic joints. The plant grows wild along every stream and shaded path in America. The technique has not changed. Number 3. The pine needle tea. In 1535, the French explorer Jacques Cartier and his crew were dying of scurvy on the frozen St. Lawrence River, their teeth falling out, their gums bleeding, their legs covered in dark bruises. An Iroquois healer named Domagaya brought them a tea brewed from the fresh green needles of the white pine tree. Within 8 days, the sailors had fully recovered. Pine needles contain 6 times more vitamin C than an orange by weight. American pioneers brewed pine needle tea every winter when fresh fruit was impossible. They prevented scurvy, they prevented colds, they prevented the soft tooth disease that destroyed urban diets without it. The technique was lost when supermarkets made citrus available year-round. The trees still grow, the needles still contain the same vitamin C. The technique has not changed. Number 2. The lobelia herb. Native American tribes called it Indian tobacco, though it is not related to the tobacco plant. They smoked the dried leaves and brewed the herb into a tea for asthma attacks, severe coughs, and choking spells. By 1840, an American physician named Samuel Thomson had built an entire system of medicine called Thomsonian botanic medicine around lobelia. By 1860, 1 in every 6 American families used the Thomsonian system as their primary medicine. Traditional medical doctors threatened, lobbied for state laws prohibiting Thomsonian practitioners from charging fees. By 1900, Thomsonian medicine had been suppressed. By 1993, lobelia had been quietly removed from the generally recognized as safe list maintained by the Food and Drug Administration on the basis of a single study using extracted alkaloid concentrations no traditional herbalist would ever administer. Your great-grandmother kept dried lobelia in a small tin in the medicine cabinet. She used a pinch in warm water for a child struggling to breathe through an asthma attack. The plant is legal to grow. It is increasingly difficult to find for sale. The knowledge nearly disappeared in a single generation. Number 1. The mugwort. This is our final pattern break and the most ancient remedy on this list. The plant that humans have used the longest. Archaeological evidence shows mugwort being burned for ritual and used medicinally in Europe and Asia for at least 60,000 years. Every culture that touched it found the same uses. The Greeks called it the mother of herbs. The Chinese still use it today in moxibustion, the warming therapy that has never left their medicine. The Cherokee and the Iroquois used the related American mugwort for women's reproductive complaints, painful menstruation, sluggish digestion, and to bring on vivid dreams that elders believed connected the dreamer to ancestral wisdom. Your great-great-grandmother grew it along the north side of the farmhouse where it would not take over the garden. She crushed the leaves in hot water for menstrual cramps. She stuffed dried mugwort into pillowcases for restless sleepers. She placed sprigs of it under the pillows of children who suffered from nightmares. The active compounds are called thujone and artemisinin. The same plant family produced the Nobel Prize-winning malaria drug artemisinin, isolated in 1972 by a Chinese researcher who learned about it from a 1600-year-old Chinese herbal text. The plant grows wild in fields and roadsides across America. It is legal everywhere. It has not been banned, only forgotten. And forgotten is its own kind of erasure. These are 20 plants, 20 techniques, 20 small acts of inherited knowledge, passed mother to daughter, grandmother to grandchild, across an unbroken chain of 300 years on American soil. They were not magic. They were not folklore. They were not superstition. They were the result of countless generations of women paying attention to what worked, on their own children, in their own kitchens, with their own hands. Your great-grandmother did not need a clinical trial. She had her mother, she had her grandmother, she had 4 generations of women before her who had already tested every leaf and every root on people they loved. A pharmaceutical industry that did not exist before 1900 did not displace these plants because the plants stopped working. The plants still work exactly the way they always have. The chemistry has not changed. The compounds inside the leaves have not changed. What changed was who got paid when you used them. When you grew a willow tree in your yard, nobody got rich. When you bought a bottle of aspirin at the drugstore, a German chemical company got rich. When you chewed plantain leaf on a wasp sting, nobody got rich. When you drove to urgent care for a topical steroid, an entire industry got rich. Your great-grandmother was not poor. She was sovereign. She grew her own food. She brewed her own medicine. She did not call a hotline. She did not check with an insurance company. She did not need permission from a regulatory agency to put a chamomile flower in a cup of hot water. That sovereignty is what was taken from her, and it is what can be returned to her great-granddaughters, one plant at a time. Pick one, just one. Pick the plant on this list that grows where you live, the one you already have access to, the one your grandmother might have used. Learn it, grow it, read about it from 3 different sources written before 1940. Tell me in the comments which plant you are choosing first. This is the Forgotten Apothecary. This is American history. The plants are legal. The knowledge belongs to you.